Welcome to Earlville Library District's Yarn Craft Club for April 2023. Today, we'll be making knitting machine bunnies. We're offering 2 in-person opportunities to make these this month at the library. We'll provide the machines and all of the supplies. Give us a call to sign up. If you can't make our in-person meetings, our knitting machines are always available to reserve to use on your own schedule. We'll provide the machines and tools, and you bring the yarn, whether you're making this project or your own. Let's get started. We're using Lion Brand's Pound of Love yarn for this project, but you can use any yarn that works well in your 48-pin knitting machine. For this project, I'll be using waste yarn to make neat edges. I'll go through all of the steps involved in this process, and first, you'll want to choose a contrasting color for the waste yarn. Load the machine by cranking the handle forward until the single white pin is directly in front of the yarn guide. Hold the tail of the waste yarn in your right hand and the rest of the yarn in your left, and hook the yarn underneath the white pin and drop the tail inside the machine. There should be a few inches of tail hanging inside the ring. Then, begin slowly cranking your machine forward while you alternate weaving the waste yarn behind the next pin as it pops up, in front of the next, then behind, then in front, and so on until you make it all the way back around. Once you reach the white pin again, bring the yarn forward through the yarn guide and settle it into place. The yarn should enter the guide in between the last pink pin and the first white pin. Continue bringing the yarn forward and down towards the tensioner and slide the yarn into the middle slot. Place your yarn on the floor or in a bucket below the machine so that it can flow freely into the machine with no added tension. Reset your counter and begin cranking your machine until you reach 10 rows. This yarn will be discarded when our project is complete. Now you'll switch to the main color for your bunny. Make sure your white pin is directly in front of the yarn guide and cut the waste yarn a couple of inches below the tensioner. Slide it out of that slot and up and out of the yarn guide. Lay the tail inside the machine to the left of the white pin. Grab your main color and lay the tail in the same spot as your waste tail. Bring it up and slide it into the slot of the yarn guide and then slip the yarn into the middle tension slot. Place the yarn below the machine so it can feed freely. Restart your counter. Gently press down or hold your 2 tails as you crank the machine forward just a couple of stitches to make sure everything is feeding into the machine correctly. Then let go of your tails and continue cranking the machine normally. Crank for 34 rows. Now we'll switch back to the waste yarn color. Make sure your white pin is directly in front of the yarn guide. Cut your main color yarn a couple of inches below the tension guide. Just like our last color change, slide the yarn out of the tension slot and up and out of the yarn guide. Lay it inside the machine to the left of the white pin. Bring the waste yarn color tail to lie in the same place inside the machine. Bring it up and slide it into the yarn guide and continue bringing it forward and into the middle tension slot. Gently press down or hold the 2 tails as you slowly crank forward a few stitches just to make sure everything is running smoothly. Restart your counter and crank for 10 rows. To remove the project from the machine, we won't be picking up the stitches with a needle. Make sure the white pin is directly in front of your yarn guide. Cut the waste yarn color a couple of inches below the tension guide. Slide the yarn out of the tensioner and up and out of the yarn guide. Lay the tail inside the machine to the left of the white pin.
Press down gently on that tail as you crank the machine forward just a few stitches. Then you can let go of the tail and crank the machine for 2 full rotations with no new yarn feeding into the machine. On the second round, the project will fall right off of the machine. Gently stretch the stitches out lengthwise without disturbing the waste yarn stitches. The waste yarn isn't finished off and they will unravel easily. For the seaming part of this project, my preferred method is using a crochet hook. I find a size G works well for me. Use whatever you're comfortable with. Choose one end of your project to start with and locate the 3 tails for that edge. Grab hold of them gently and tug your project horizontally to find the point on your project directly across from the tails. Hold the project in place and slide over to that opposite edge to start. To seam the project together, we'll be working with the loops in the main color of our project only. We'll use the crochet hook to pick up each one of these main color loops. Insert the crochet hook underneath one of the stitches on the very corner of that folded edge. Here I'm choosing the loop on the front edge. Slide the crochet hook also underneath the next loop on the back edge. Use the crochet hook to pull the back loop through the front loop. You should have 1 loop still on your hook. Now, alternate between picking up and drawing the next loop on the back edge of the project through the loop on your hook, and then picking up and drawing the next loop on the front edge of the project through the loop on your hook. Continue like this until you reach the other side of the work and all main color loops have been picked up. When you've finished picking up each loop, you should be next to all of the tails from this side of the project. Wrap the main color yarn tail around the crochet hook and bring it through the loop on your hook. Draw the tail all the way through the loop on your hook, and your hook will be free and your project will stay in place. This is a good time to take a look at your project, give it a stretch, to see if you've missed any loops along the way. Now we'll remove the waste yarn. The way this happens will depend on which side you're on. On one side of the project, you'll be able to remove the waste yarn simply by tugging on the waste yarn tail, and it will easily unravel and pull free of your project. The side I started on, however, takes an additional step. To get started, you have to remove the first round of knitting from the project. To do this, tug on the waste yarn tail at the top of the project, and you'll be able to see it's connected to a line of yarn running through the top loops of the project. Instead of pulling each stitch free, I move a little ways down the work, locate that top yarn strand running through the project, and pull it free from a bunch of stitches at once. Then I can tug on the project again to locate another point a little ways down the work to dig out that strand and pull the stitches free. You'll need to work all around the project in this manner just once. When you get back to the beginning of the round, you'll notice when you tug, the stitches after the starting point will start to fall off freely. Make sure to pull the waste yarn free of the last attached stitch, and then you can start pulling off the waste yarn quickly by just tugging on the tail. I wind my yarn back into a ball so I can reuse it as waste yarn in another project. When you've unraveled all the way down to your project, you'll need to tug a little harder to pull the last round of orange stitches free. Once you do, you should have a nice, clean edge of main color stitches. Now you'll repeat exactly the same seaming process with the crochet hook for the other edge. This side of the project is easy to remove the waste yarn from. Simply find the waste yarn tail from the top row and start pulling. Again, I wind this yarn back up into a ball to use again later. Keep pulling until all of your waste yarn is removed. Now you should have a double-layered knitted square ready to become a bunny. Use a tapestry needle to thread each of your yarn tails and hide them in between the layers of the project. Since your project is a square, it doesn't matter which edge is facing up, but in my example, if you're interested, my seamed edges are at the top and bottom of my square. Next, thread your needle with about 2 yards of main color yarn. I'm going to demonstrate with a contrasting color so you can see the stitches. Starting on one side of the square at the middle, sew small stitches directly across the square, making sure to go through both layers of fabric. I made sure I could feel my needle hitting the table to ensure I was getting both layers. Leave a few inches of tail when you start sewing, but no need to knot it yet. From the opposite edge of the square, sew with the same small stitches through both layers diagonally to the top of the project. I used another needle to mark what I thought was the middle, so I had a bit of a guide. Once you reach the top, sew down diagonally in the same fashion back to the starting point. I'm going to change out my yarn now for the correct main color yarn. Your project should look more like this with less visible stitches. Use a small amount of stuffing and place it in the center of the triangle created by the stitches. Tug on both tails at the side of the work and the project will begin to cinch together around the stuffing. Push the stuffing into the triangle hole as you close the hole smaller and smaller. You can see the bunny ears and the head taking shape. To secure this part, send the needle through the fabric near the neck from the opposite side of the tail towards the tail. Pull tightly and tie the working yarn to the tail. This part is optional, but I like to wrap the yarn once around the neck of the bunny to hide the stitches we made and tie off again. Don't cut your yarn. Leave it attached to the needle. Now, with the bunny's head pointed down, we're going to sew together the 2 seams that make up the bunny's back. I look for a set of stitches from each edge of the back, line them up, and run the needle back and forth through 2 sets of stitches at a time. When you reach the end of the back seam, knot the yarn so it stays in place, but do not cut it. Use the same yarn to weave back and forth around the last open edge of the bunny. We'll use this as a drawstring to close the project. Once you reach your starting point, pull open the bunny's body if you need to and fill with stuffing. Pull the drawstring closed and tie off. Weave your ends into the project. For the finishing touch, you'll need a pom-pom for the bunny's tail. We used the smallest of our pom-pom makers for this step. Grab your preferred color yarn, open both wings on one side of the pom-pom maker. Wrap the yarn around both of these wings, up and down the U shape until it's full. Close the wings back into the tool so that it stays in place and cut the yarn. Repeat to fill the other set of wings on the tool with the yarn. With a pair of very sharp scissors, snip the wrapped yarn apart by cutting down the groove of the tool on both sides. Make sure to keep the tool firmly together during this step. Once all of the wraps have been snipped, cut another long length of the main color bunny yarn and slide the middle down into the groove that separates both halves of the tool. Bring the yarn around the tool through the groove to the other side and tie a firm knot. You want the knot to be tight, but not so tight that the yarn snaps. I like to wrap both ends of the yarn around the groove again to the opposite side and tie several more knots. Leave the yarn tails long, open the wings of the tool, and separate the pom-pom maker in the middle to release the pom-pom. Fluff out the pom-pom and trim to your liking. Thread one tail from the pom-pom onto a tapestry needle. Find the position you would like the tail to sit on your bunny. I made sure the tail would be high enough that the bunny could sit upright once attached. Sew the pom-pom through the body of the rabbit a few times where you would like your tail to sit. Tie the two pom-pom tails together to secure, trim off excess, and hide the remaining tails inside the project. With that, your bunny is all done. Thanks for joining us for our knitting machine bunny. Remember, for April 2023, we're offering 2 opportunities to come and knit these up with us in person. If you can't make it to one of our classes, feel free to give us a call and reserve our knitting machines to use in our conference room if you'd like to bring your own yarn. We have stuffing, pom-pom makers, and other tools to share. You can even borrow our tablet and watch this video at the library while you craft. Once again, we hope this video is fun to watch wherever you are. Check out our website at www.earlvillelibrary.org so you'll always know what we're up to. Thanks for watching!